like it's headed that way. A couple times last week it stopped, but um,
I got
yeah,
an okay question, so there you go.
like okay, it's headed that way.
Oh yeah, I got it too.
A couple times last week it stopped, but yeah. Okay, we're good. We're live. Looks like we're live. Go
Okay,
forward.
it's 2:03. I will call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order. We have a quorum. All four voting members are present. We didn't expect Vika nor Aaron this week. Aaron's on vacation. Herb Main said he might join in, and I don't know anything
Here he
about
is.
Carol.
I see Herb Main. Welcome, Herb Main. We're let's see. He's beaming down right now.
Okay.
There he is. Hey Herb, we're on YouTube live, and
Okay, so the first order of business is any public input for any items not on the agenda. Herb, do you have anything not on the agenda? We will get to a discussion. Okay, so we'll get to a discussion of the road network that you and Mark put together. Next item is a detailed review of the existing capital assets inventory and the replacement master list, which is where we're trying to come up with what are the required annual reserve additions. So, Chip, I'll hand it off to you.
let's see. Participants can see the screen. Okay. Well, this since we last left our heroes, they are. See if I get this a little bigger. And there's really no reason to go through it line by line. The principal changes where I've made some notes. They have tried to put most of the questions. The goal, I think, is to try and get this to be as accurate as possible, so the selectmen can say, okay, we're going to put so much in these reserve accounts. So this hasn't changed. In the concept, there have been some items that I've gone through, and the typical mythology, maybe that's a better word, is for, say, for the stone wharf. Obviously, you're not going to replace it one by one like you would trucks in a fleet. So took that out of it. Over on the right is these here, the 2026 budget. These columns numbers are ones that were put in on the Machias, I call it Bob Ernest spreadsheet. I think he was the one who's working it. And this here is the sum of all of this column. So, took out things like the stone wharf that needs to be finished. Large ramps, floats, and gangways. All of these things have questions. We can talk about as many or as little as you want this week. The fire truck had, after Jay and John talked to Ralph, and it was determined that, yeah, they do want a new fire truck. So that is in there now as a replacement here, which is $500,000. That generates, of course, a big number that has to be put in. So this all has to be worked and kind of curated, because that's generating, $345,000. During that, these here items here, I added, based on what he gave you and John's notes from there. They were items that were kind of things that had to be replaced. There weren't really any numbers, but I'm just capturing them so they're on there to create a discussion about items that apparently they want to look at some point. We don't have years they were put into asset, they put in service, the original cost, hence nothing else works on the rest of that. The building facilities also, during that, Ralph mentioned that there was a public safety, that the roof was done in 2008. Furnace was 82, has some problems. The building septic was 40 years old. So I'm just capturing those as things that have to be captured as a cost, and they can be determined, what that would add into it. This is not about the whole, new public safety building, but just the one that's there. A lot of these items are items that they do have captured costs for, and what the replacement would, and what we might, $62,000, that might be prudent to put away towards future replenishment. Some of these items are not, it's kind of simple to, these items above building facilities, you have certain items, real estate items that is, air compressors and that type of thing. So there are some things that need some more definition. There's 9031 is the town office, land acquisition and development. What are those really for? They're not hard assets that you need to replenish, but you need to add to them. Looks like they did add in a couple in this year's budget, $10,000. So I think it's more of just an explanation so we can have a working knowledge of what those mean. And solar array purchase, you guys had gotten some, John had gotten some documents on that. We put those in base camp, and that has to be decided on what, if it's going to be purchased. I'm not sure that has to be done right away, but Jay had suggested that possibly we're overfunded on that and that would have a $21,000 surplus if that could be repurposed somewhere else, I guess. And that would be up there on town meeting. Broadband, just talked to Michael. I happened to see him on the wharf yesterday, and he sent me a couple documents, which I only read one, but they seem to be I had asked him for just a general story. What's the narrative about this so people can kind of get up to speed on it? Obviously, there's revenue flow in and out. We've had brief discussions about that, but that should be in here. And perhaps it's it's an expense, and we also captured the revenue, which it's supposed to be. Maybe it's a wash. Vehicles 9035. I'm not sure what that is. The revaluation, there was some discussion of that. I didn't whether that is for the one they do every year, which is more of a computer generated one, or one that's is done a full revaluation. There's stuff on Basecamp. By the way, on these links here, what I tried to do was put a link into this spreadsheet so it goes back to Basecamp. Managing all this kind of data, some of it, you couldn't manage all this, what's on the spreadsheet in Basecamp. Basecamp is mostly for project where you're talking about stuff, emails back and forth, and it's good at handling documents and so forth, but it can't do that. But it can't do this type of spreadsheet. But if you do highlight this here, that is the link to it. And so if you go to the Basecamp login, you'll wind up on that Basecamp page for 9040. So if you were reviewing it, and I think the goal is to kind of divvy all this stuff up so we can start to get some hard descriptions and answers on them. So if you're working on something and you're saying, oh, I want to, what's this 9040? I want to put a comment in here. That's what that's for. It'll take you right to that Basecamp, and then you can tab back to get back to here. Paving, Herb did a great job, and I still have some.
Chip, question before you move on from those two. 9040. Is this really capital items, or is this just seems odd to me to be putting with capital investment needs?
I don't know. There's two 9040s.
Well, besides that, it seems like it's more another budgetary item than capital to me.
Yeah, well, Jim, I think what we have is the we've got a list of all the reserve accounts. And
Right, I
certainly
understand that.
all the reserve accounts are, they're not hard physical capital assets, but they are all things that the town is potentially putting money away for over time, because they're expensive items that, one, maybe you're trying to smooth out the impact of them, such as reevaluation or matching
Yeah,
grants. Under the school, they've got special education. They've got a reserve for that. So I think we need to
okay,
have our
well,
arms around them to the degree that they result in spending and may require future reserves that aren't part of the, let's say, the normal school operating budget or the normal municipal operating budget.
And,
all
and
right, it just seemed odd to me, that's all.
well,
Yeah,
it's a good question, Jim. It's a valid question. I think if we keep, so you can post that in whichever 9040 you want on Basecamp. And we create a narrative that we then present it back to the Board of Selectmen, and say, why is this? I don't know. And there may not be, it may be something that isn't really being looked at the right way. So
if I may, the alternative to a reserve account is to carry over funds in an operations account year to year, which, at least for the selectmen, is harder to track and harder to keep your head around. But those are the basic two mechanisms. If you're gonna allocate funds, if you don't use funds in an operation account at the end of the year, it goes into an undesignated fund unless you have your auditor go through this carryover process, which is it's just harder to conceive of for the selectmen. So they do it this way, I think, is the simple answer.
Okay,
Also, Herb, isn't there a time limit? It's like 3 years on the carryover? I
No, I think you're
don't know
thinking
where I
of
remember that from, but
you're thinking of the school undesignated fund can't carry over more than 3 years.
oh, okay.
Related.
okay.
But maybe it makes sense. I think currently this list is organized by reserve account number. And maybe eventually it needs to be organized by, the buildings are different than equipment replacement, and are different than, reevaluation, special education funds, et cetera, et cetera. So, to
well,
help people get their arms around where are the costs and, what do we need to know and what's the approach to gather the information.
yeah, I think there's a lot of questions just like that as I look through these things, and each piece of information, as you point out, is sorted by the reserve account, and that's not necessarily the same. It might be in that reserve account, but it's not. You'll see later on. I tried to treat some of those that way, that are within an account. Paving, I posted some stuff as I thought I understood what Herb had said. Maybe when he gets a chance, we can talk more about that and see if what I did was try and come up with, and again, and of course, all these individual roads, again, we don't need to see them, and they can they can go away. And so I compacted this into one paving item, that there's 90,000, there's add 25 is 115, based on what I think I understood, but I want to confirm with her. We would need to be putting that additional away this year towards having what we would pave after 3 years if we were to do it in batches of 3 batches over 10 years. So I just wanted to confirm that, because obviously the original number of replacing all the roads after 40 years was, a huge amount every year. And that graph you had, Herb, was a great representation of why it makes sense to repair roads early, rather than let them fall into disrepair. So, and I guess that would take somebody somehow, I don't know what the vehicle is for the town to uh, run the paving program or find out or what, I don't know what that is. It sounds like there was a paving committee or something, Herb, that got disbanded.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that has to, they need to get that going as well. And
So a question on that, you've got that 267 in there, and I mean, I read Herb's write-up one time through and maybe looked at the numbers a couple times, but the 267 was a calculation to be able to do a third of the paving at some point in time, right?
right.
And does that
So
still leave you the 80,000 minimum reserve that Herb thought made sense to do emergency things?
it should. I mean, the 267 is just 800 divided by 3. And when does it need to be done? I mean, that's the year of this was in 2025 was the year of that estimate. It needs to be replaced in 2028, assuming that would be 3 years. Now, that doesn't capture, as he said, there's some repairs that need to be done, which may chew up some of what's in here. But that was saying, okay, it's 800, 800,000, and you divide it this way. And so you're going to need, in 3 years, you're going to need 300,000 in there. And this capital reserve 115 would, by then at investment rate of 3.5% or whatever it is 128. Now that may not be the same next year because you may chew some of that up, but this model would take that into effect if it was a diminished capital reserve amount. And then just saying what's the annual allocation to get there, and coming up with 57,000. So that should, if you did, and I didn't do that, but if you start out with a reserve which is 115, and then you are adding this to it, you should maintain above what he said was a minimum, and then eventually have enough to do in that 3 years, have enough put away to do a third of the roads with the chip seal, which is less expensive. The Public Works, there's a bunch of old assets in here put into service. They don't amount to a budget buster amount, but I just think this list needs to be curated and figured out. Do they still exist? They were, and so they don't have any numbers next to them. These were the only ones that were alive, and they generate what would have to be put away to replace those. Eventually, somebody's going to have to go through and obviously update all these estimates, because some of these estimates here that we've got are, 4, 5, 10. Here's one that's 10 years old. So somebody in the town will have to go through, and if they want accurate numbers, and say, okay, maybe just pick out the most expensive ones and start with them, and say, okay, what would it take to replace the 2010 caseload or backhoe, and and then we update this and say, okay, it's going to be 120,000, but the year of the estimate is 2025. So that's work eventually that, if they want accurate numbers, that will certainly make them more accurate. The recycling compactor seems to be a little overfunded, but again, it's not a really significant number. Harbor, these are
On both of those, I sent an email to Vika and said that somebody on the committee would like to sit down with Public Works and Transfer Station. And in both cases, that would be Jeff, and Jeff would want Tanner to be part of the Public Works discussion.
Yep.
And I haven't heard back from Vika. The question was, did she want to participate in that conversation, or was it okay to just plan a time with Jeff? So
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
hopefully
I
we can
saw
do that
Jeff.
in the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, I saw Jeff on the boat today, and I think he'd be perfectly happy to sit down, I guess, with Tanner as well,
Yeah, I just didn't
whoever
want to do
else.
it with, he works for Vika, to my understanding. And
Yes,
so I
Yeah.
wanted her okay that we could sit down with those guys. So
right,
that,
right.
Yeah, and eventually, I think yes, they would have to. She's got so many things going on that as long as she stays in contact with it, and we might suggest to her that she become a member of Base Camp, just as we talked about yesterday, John, or whenever it was. You don't need to. Anyone of the people participants can unsubscribe from any of these email strings, and just go in once a day and go to the project activity and see everything that's gone on. So that would be a way for her to just check once in a while on what's going on, because I mean, there's hundreds of hours of work that this is looking at to get all this information. And as I see it, easements and drainage, those I think were on questions for Vika, and maybe again, just to give us a little story about, what those are for, what kind of assets, to Jim's point, what kind of assets are they? Do we need to, they haven't funded them this year, cemetery capital reserve, is that treated as it's just, I don't know. We need to find out. Those are open questions. Harbor Master, it's fairly straightforward. Again, it's not a big number. The Coastal Access Fund, what I tried to do with this, because these weren't hard assets that need to be replaced, and you can't, but are they something that needs to be maintained? As Aaron had talked about, the school, 3% of the value of the school is what you should figure um, for annual maintenance of the school. So in that case, I changed the methodology here, or the mythology, to this here, where it's called maintenance, and it takes the rate of 3% times the value of the asset. Now that may have nothing to do with Coastal Access Fund, and we can change that. But all of these ones down here, and I didn't get around to putting the base camp links in here, but all of these in here kind of need, explanations. Some of them are not big dollar items, but this, what's the school special education reserve? How is that treated? Is that going to be maintained, quote, not replaced, but maintained at a rate of 3%? And you can put whatever you want into it, and it will change the other numbers. So that was these items: transportation reserve. I don't know what they are. School tuition reserve, playground. That seems likely. But do you need to be putting money away for that, or what's it going to cost? If we have, if the playground is worth $17,000 and we have to pay 3%, we have $17,000 already in there. Obviously, we have a surplus in there. All of these numbers then become surplus. So these really have to be figured out to say they are going into this amount here as a negative one, and there's enough where there's a couple $100,000. So if you back these out, that would be up to 400. So those all need to be looked at to say, just explain to them, and how are they treated. Rescue vehicles, that's the ambulance we talked about, which is in there not being replaced. And so that's the.
well, there is a replacement plan. So there's two
Well,
ambulances.
yeah.
One is the backup, and they would replace the 2021 ambulance in 2033.
Yeah.
And then that becomes the backup, and we buy a new ambulance. So that translates into what, a $35,000 a year reserve need.
Well, if it, and I welcome you guys to double check my numbers with a paper and pencil and a calculator. I really, because I think these are, it made sense to me, but as my wife Vicky will tell you, quite often things that make sense to me don't make sense to anyone else. So just, double check it. But it is one of those things that this is one of the sneaky ones that all of a sudden because rescue vehicles and all the fire stuff is so expensive, it has a big, it's not a playground type level. It's like, no, it's an expensive vehicle. So yeah, it's some hard cash in there. School capital reserve. Now this here was where I just took the maintenance rate of the original amount of the school. I don't know what these other numbers are actually for. They're listed in there and under 91, 97. It would be nice to clean them up if we don't need to look at them. I can make them disappear so that you don't have to look at them every time. But the only one that is having any influence on this is this one here, and that's at a rate of 3%. And based on that, if we were just saying, if we only need to spend $50,000 a year well, then we have excess capacity in the school reserve. And I understand you have to vote if you want to move that or reuse it somewhere, or it seems somewhere in that school budget that would get picked up and used. So you can see the big numbers that are affecting Cousins Island parking reserve. Go ahead.
Just on that one, Chip, before we move on. So
Yep.
the new school was built in what, 2017?
Well, this varies a little bit.
2019.
This said 2019.
I think
Yeah.
it's 19, yeah.
So
Okay.
probably that.
2019, and maybe finished in 2020. I don't know, but we're now in fiscal year 2026. So the 3% was an annual. I think the 3% in some places, you posted something that said, 3 to 5% and 3% maybe covered long-term capital maintenance, but also annual maintenance, like janitorial service, et cetera, et cetera. So that 3% is who knows whether that is the right number or not.
John,
But
if I could interject, my guess
Sure.
is that 3% is toward larger repairs that may occur periodically during the life of the building, not annual maintenance.
right, and that kind of okay, so that kind of speaks to my point. So you got to put 50,000 away every year, and so if we're now in year 6, we need 300,000. I don't see that we have an excess, if that's the right number.
Right.
I'm not
don't
saying
know.
that's
It's a
I'm
good
not saying
point.
it's the right number.
Yeah. No, it's an excellent point. We'll put that on that, as we get more information about 91, 97, that discussion needs to be had about what is this probably what I have there isn't accurate.
Although they may have
It's
spent
probably
some of it.
something we could all ignore, and nobody would ever remember that we were the guys that screwed it up in 2026.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
the
they
other
It's
thing,
not going to be an issue
the
for
other-
20 years.
we have witnesses, and it's all on YouTube.
the other thing we don't know is whether there were some repairs done in the last 7 years that used some of that money.
That's true. And I think that I don't know. I'm just kind of looking at going forward what they want to put in the 2026 budget. So maybe, it's a good point. 91, 97 is it may wind up being 2 line items. All of those rest of them, I'm not sure what they are. They seem to be just kind of excess, but 91, 97 needs some
Well,
work and decision.
Aaron told us that when they built the new school, they did not replace the heating system, and they did not replace their commercial stove or oven. And at some point in time, those 2 things need to be addressed.
Right. So they need to be in there. So there's probably the 9197 needs more information. So all of these line items, the Cousins Island Parking Reserve, again, what is that? The annual maintenance, 3%. I think, oh, I see what that is. That's a mistake. That's just wrong. That wound up there for some reason. So what do we, do with Cousins Island? This here, I don't have that right.
That's that's a predetermined number in the agreement with Yarmouth, who holds the funds.
Well, is that the Cousins Island
Well,
parking?
this is the
wharf?
parking. This is the parking lot, not the wharf, right? This is the parking lot, I think, and it doesn't CTC pay that
I
amount to the town as part of the lease?
I
Yes.
don't know.
Yeah, about 2,000 a year, I think.
That's
Right.
not going to go very far.
Something on that order.
Yeah,
No, it isn't going to go very far.
no, I think that's the revealing thing about all these. So, yeah, there's obviously some more. Yeah, I don't have all these on 9197. Anyway, so I guess, in John's, I don't want to take forever talking about this, but this is where I've been focusing just because it seems to be the immediate question that they have is how much do we have to put in these reserve? What do you recommend we put in the 2026 reserve budgets? And trying to answer those. So I've been focusing on this and trying to make this as easy to use as possible. I guess it seems like there's a lot of work that has to be done to flesh these out and to get those numbers in column Z as accurate as possible. And obviously there's still, some of them are very wide ranging. So I don't know, what do you think is the best way, John, to handle all these? And you're going to be gone for a little bit. I mean, it looks like we got a lot of homework to do, just shaking these things loose.
Yeah, just touching base on a couple things. I think it might make sense to separate the list from long-term capital maintenance items to capital replacement items like trucks and vehicles and, expensive compactors or whatever. And then all the other things like the school reserves, the reevaluation, the grants, the land acquisition, have them in their own section. Because to some degree, I don't know how we're going to get our hands around that. The selectmen probably know more about some of that stuff than we know now. And I think we ought to focus on existing asset replacement or capital maintenance. I think they've got a pretty good handle on some of the other stuff. But the other thing I think we know is that with all the potential big ticket items ahead of us, I think it would be this committee's recommendation that every year the taxes ought to go up as much as reasonable, and that every dollar that isn't needed for school or municipal operations collectively we need to get our arms around.
Yeah,
that money gets saved in reserve funds. How do the reserve funds get moved around, and what's our fiscal capacity for the big projects?
right. Then it's the whole, that's the other question that you've been working on, John, which is down the future for some of these, right, big things that have to get bonded. So this is kind of under the hood stuff of, are there any of these items that Jim or Jay that you would want to grab onto, or and to get I don't know, raise people's hands about they want to grab any of these items and get more information on them, or so we can get our hands around them?
Well, if I may, since we've already done some of that and you've already got some volunteers on the road stuff.
Yeah.
What more information would you be looking for in something like that, and how is that going to change? You kind of blew through the section there, but are you anticipating now one line item here that's backed up by a paper plan that says we're going to, basically our memo or something more refined than that, perhaps?
Sure.
But is that the idea?
Oh yeah, yeah. I just started with the asset list. That's where all these lines came from, and then it's applied the same methodology to every item, and that meant the roads were going to be replaced in 40 years.
I understand what you did.
Okay.
I'm asking what your goal is here. Is line 132 in your spreadsheet?
Yep, that's it.
That's going to be what it is. Okay.
That's it. Yeah, based on your recommendations.
And then you've got volunteers that have put together a document that supports those numbers and explains those numbers. And I think that's the model that you ought to be trying to do here, instead of capturing all the detail here. I think you really need to elicit from the people who know these things a 1 or 2 page thing like we did, and you can use that as an example if it works. It doesn't have to be rocket science. It doesn't have to be final. It has to be capturing people's, institutional knowledge and their sort of gut feeling about where we're headed as a town. And then you guys need to kind of,
that makes sense.
Harden it up.
That makes sense to me, Herb, but just a couple examples. I felt that it was important to sit down with the fire company. I just, I didn't know whether we would get anything like you and Mark did from the fire company if we just, without having a model or something to fill out, which we didn't have. So I thought that was an efficient way to do it. And I'm not sure that, and I wonder if the efficient way to do it with Public Works and transfer station is to sit down and go through the details and have a conversation about what they see.
Well, it may be required the first time around here, but I mean, as a operating model, I can't imagine this committee is going to have the bandwidth to keep on doing that.
No.
Right.
I think that's a good idea. I think that we can, I can, if you want, over the next, few days, and again, not to just to keep this as short as possible. And we can, I guess Vika might be the best director she might be able to look at these things and say, who's the best person to contact, and we can, based on Herb's recommendation, and again, use his 2-page reply, get answers to all these. I think a lot of them will be fairly short, and a lot of them, all these ones you see here are not, just what is the money? What's just an explanation of it.
Chip, I'm wondering if the fire equipment could be restructured into something that says this is what we need in 1 year and another year and another year, instead of amortizing all of it, because that's a whole lot of your lines. And it's sort of a question, rather than take it from a sort of a depreciation fund viewpoint, which is where you're at now, go to a viewpoint that says in 2027, we need this truck that costs $500,000. And in 31, we need this truck that costs so much.
Well, that's what we do.
You do have that, but it doesn't appear in the presentation. So
Well,
I'm saying
No, but those 4 fire trucks are in there, and
right. But I'm
Those were
saying
That's pretty good information.
Structure the aggregate, an aggregate fire department equipment issue around, again, a single line, but there's plug-in numbers in the years in which you know the equipment needs to be purchased, which would be more like an expenditure pattern rather than a depreciation pattern.
Right. And that if I can just interject, that has been done with the fire trucks in the past. I don't know where that stands, but there was at one point a spreadsheet which had the 5 or 6 trucks in there and did just exactly that. And it was a cycle. We had 5 big trucks and we were giving them 25-year lifespans. So every 5 years, how much did you have to raise in 5 years? All of it was going to the truck of focus that needed to be replaced in that year, which I think is what Jim's talking about. I think that's an easier model to put your head around than trying to amortize everything.
It seems to me if we did the same thing with Jeff, would collapse a lot of these lines into a half dozen lines that capture at least most of those departments' needs. The other stuff is different, but.
Yep, that makes sense.
On the topic
So in the
of
fire department, suck out the fire trucks, and in the public works, we're going to have their big pieces of equipment, which primarily trucks, and a replacement schedule for that.
And whatever it is on the recycling center, so.
Okay. Hey, John, while
Yes.
you're away, shall I try and see if I can get Vika's go ahead to sit down with Jeff and Tanner and go through the list?
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great.
Okay. So why don't I take the public works and the transfer station, and I'll get hold of Vika and make sure it's okay. And then I'll get hold of Jeff and Tanner, and we'll go from there.
Okay. All right, you're on.
Yeah,
And
okay.
there is.
By the way, this, Herb, that
Yep.
list that you talked about the fire, the fire department vehicles, I know it used to exist. John and I specifically asked
Well,
Ralph about it, and he didn't know anything about it.
yeah, he didn't build it.
Well,
Yeah, no, we had an Excel spreadsheet, Herb, that maybe you did, but when we discussed it a couple of times, nobody knew who the author was.
It was either John Wilson or me, or maybe both of us, or it was
Yeah.
John and I overlapped quite a bit in those kinds of approaches for a while.
The one that you
So Chip, you had that summary up there from the fire department. So there was a plan laid out for the 4 engines.
there,
But then at the bottom too, and it's going back, Ralph, he did a nice job. He walked us, Jay and I, through the fire department. We went out and we talked for an hour, and then we wandered around because Ralph wanted to make sure he wasn't forgetting anything. But if you blow it up at the end, there was a discussion about lots of pieces of equipment, and you added some of those to this asset list, and they were relatively low cost. They were less than $7,000. They might have had a long lead time. If you blow up that second page of that summary we put together, I don't know that they need to be on this capital list, as opposed they should be part of the
Operating
annual budget.
budget.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine. I just wanted to capture them because
And it was like, but it was like turnout gear and ice survival suits and tanks, and it's important, and they need to be replaced in a timely fashion, and they're expensive, but I think historically they've probably been taken care of through the annual budget.
This
Yes.
was the largest one,
those
this
things,
turnout gear. If I was interpreting that right, 5,000 each times 23. and they got 6 new ones in 2025. So I think that's 5,000 times
Talked
17.
about buying, they talked about buying 2 or 3 a year. And I believe they said that's what they put in the operating budget for this
Okay.
year to buy.
So they don't have to be in there. No, that's fine. We could take them out.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
that's
The
no
other
problem.
the other big item that he brought up was the air tanks.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I,
Because
yeah,
That's
that's,
the,
replacing 10 of those is somewhere between $80,000 and $100,000.
Right
I-
here. Yeah.
I do think they have historically, they've replaced those en masse. They haven't cycled them, but
Yeah, right. Well,
that would be his call.
he's
Right.
trying to Portland Fire Department is apparently this spring or something soon going to be replacing 120 tanks.
Mhm.
And he suggested that we might be able to pony along, go along with them, increase the size of their order, which will be cheaper than we could do it buying 10 tanks.
I think this might be the one that they were talking about. And I don't know exactly where it came from. My recollection is that Vika said she talked. And so here's this one, but I don't think when I looked in these here, I don't know. My guess is I don't know. See this formula up here with the lookup value to another. My guess was it wasn't done by anybody locally. I don't know. Maybe you or John would have done that. But they were a little bit sophisticated. But maybe that's what you were talking about. And 4.5%, and this hadn't
Yeah.
been incorporated into this.
No, that's not the one I was talking about, but that's a similar version of that one. Looks like
Okay.
it sort of is more of an amortization style sheet too somehow. I don't quite understand what's going on there, but
No,
I
did.
can barely
uh,
see it. But but the point being the technique that you're going to use, and I think Jim's right. I think focusing on a given item, and because your window 5 or 10 years makes sense, but some of these things aren't going to be replaced for 20 years. So
Right.
I think your 5-year window or whatever window you're choosing to look at, we're not going to buy more than one truck in that time period, and that's
Right.
probably all you need to show in here.
Yeah. Well, this is just, I mean, we asked the question, who's the spreadsheet for? And if you're going to keep track of all these assets, they got to go somewhere. And if you are now, as you're going to talk to people, yeah, they look at stuff like this and they get nervous because they're so big. So they can easily be broken down into smaller bites, and it can be put in different ways where people can respond to it. They don't have to go in. We wouldn't expect somebody from the fire department to go in and change numbers here. I mean, we can change the numbers, and ideally, as you say, the correct way to do this is not. I talked about it before, but this is a spreadsheet which is 2-dimensional, and all these items are 3-dimensional, and they are just like pictures in a picture. All of these items have more than one tag on them. It may be a fire department, but like Jim said, but it's a truck, or it's something that you want to designate as something that is a budget item. You want to still track it and pay attention to it, but you want to generate a report and only pull the tags up associated with the different items. So you filter out all this stuff. We're talking about filtering out all the stuff that we don't want to see because it's just a lot. Visually, it's worrisome to look at it. So we can make these in smaller bites that people can take a look at. And I do agree that you have to ask the people. This is where we started. The only information that we had is when they're put into service and what the original cost was and when they thought they'd have to be replaced. All of those items in here, this original items until replacement, that whole column, of course, needs to be looked at. They could all be wrong. And they can have a significant effect on what happens to these numbers over here. If you start changing these by 5 years or 10 years, these numbers here will go up and down. So I'm all for anything that clarifies these numbers.
It's going to be a lot of work to
It is.
get to that level of detail and try to manage it in here. That's my only thing at this point. But
You're right.
if I could loop back to the idea of the information feed for you guys, I remember, I don't know if I heard it in a meeting or where I heard it, but that you solicited, John, information on the bigger capital projects that are underway.
Right.
Have you gotten that?
No.
Okay. And who's
Uh,
doing that?
Well, I wrote up a really brief summary, so it's posted on it's posted in Basecamp.
Okay.
Okay, but none of those, I think
Quantified.
none of those big projects do we know what they're going to cost, right? For example, the Stone Pier said that where we stand with the Stone Pier is we're entering into a contract with GEI engineers to do a 30% design, and then it spoke to the timing of having that 30% design done. And there was some other information there. And similar comment on South Shore Drive, I believe.
In Bennett's
but-
Cove.
Yeah. So I don't know. Can you bring that up, Chip? It would have been, it's under major projects, I guess.
This is information that you received from somebody, from Vika or somebody, or
Just sitting down for 45 minutes with Vika.
okay.
This was this one here, John?
Yeah. Yeah, if there's a Word document there.
These projects?
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks like it.
Well, no, that was an attachment just speaking to one of those projects.
Right.
That was an attachment that went with the summary about Bennett's Cove.
Is
Oh,
this
or
something you did
whatever.
recently? You did,
No, it was
you did the other day?
2 or
Deck
3
No,
weeks
a
ago.
couple of weeks ago.
Couple of
This
weeks
one
ago.
here?
No, not that capacity.
No. It would have been under projects.
You want to search for it by, do you have a name to search for it? With a keyword
I labeled all my stuff TCOF and put a date on it.
yeah, there's
But there's going to be a gazillion of those.
too many of those.
Yeah.
Keep going down the list.
Okay.
There we go. Capital plan sections. There we go. Keep rolling.
Capital plans, yeah. So no snapshots. So there's an attached document there.
Yeah, that's what we were. Okay.
That's where you were.
Well, we started.
There's that's that form. What's that form right there? That's
That's the form
individual.
for, that's at the
Okay.
description.
That was the start.
That's the
That was
ranking
just
form.
there was
Here
some
we go.
conversation
No, it's
about
part of the
prioritize. All right, so we're right there.
All right, accepted there. Accepted
Right
capital
there.
project
And
Just
snapshots.
here.
we had the discussion about
No,
what's
scroll
accepted
up.
mean.
scroll up.
We've got. That's not coming through.
Damn, I did a
It's
lot
a
of writing.
different click. It's a little
So
back up. Scroll up.
No,
that
those are
one.
the attachments that go
Yeah.
with it.
Scroll down.
It's the one that's
Right
This
not
there.
thing right here.
On that
one that's
doc,
not previewing.
This one here?
right there.
Yep.
Let me see. I've got to start it and. That's a Word document. That's this one here. Okay.
There,
Yeah, there it is.
Okay.
that's one.
Okay. And this you did just sitting down with Vika a couple weeks ago. And looks like there's still plenty of questions for what you need. All right, I'll
Yeah.
take a look at that a little more closely.
Okay. I'll just put it up in PDF format. We started doing that because it made it easier to find it. Okay.
Hey,
Okay.
Herb, if I may, I just noticed solar on the list.
90% of the community doesn't know the current status of Bennett's Cove or the Stone Pier or South Shore Drive
No.
or the solar array. So it was just an update we don't know what the Stone Pier might cost, and we're not going to know until GEI finishes their report, and here's the target date.
But you could potentially put working numbers in there.
No.
Yeah, we
You don't want to do that?
debated that.
Well, you
Yep,
could,
yep.
and then they're wrong.
Well, I don't know.
They're probably wrong anyways.
Well, I
yeah,
know,
yeah,
but
yeah.
they're really wrong.
Okay,
There's wrong and
The
there's
extent
really
to
wrong.
which they're wrong.
okay.
Yeah. We'll modify them with an adjective.
Yeah,
These are
so if you would take a look at that, Herb, that would be great.
Yeah, I'd be interested in how the information's getting fed into. I think that the key to this is going to be handling the information flow. I think. I just think it's too big to put in one place. I think it's too big for, a few people. It's just there's too many
Yeah,
moving
well, and
parts. So
Chip and I were talking about that after the meeting the other night. You'd have to have information flow and keep it up.
I kind of lost you, John, there.
Yeah, John, you're locking out occasionally.
you're cutting out.
Yeah.
Maybe he's totally cut out.
Uh-oh.
He's frozen. Okay.
That or
He's
he's
getting ready
thinking.
to say something meaningful, and therefore he got frozen.
Maybe he's just thinking.
Hey, Herb, on the,
Yes.
on the solar array, you had mentioned some time ago that somebody had taken a look at it on behalf of the Board of Selectmen,
The
made the decision that it shouldn't be purchased.
the climate action team couldn't find a compelling reason, couldn't find a compelling benefit to the town to purchase it.
Okay,
That was the way it was sort of looked at and phrased. Sure, you can purchase it, but we don't see any benefit to purchasing it for taxpayers or
okay.
the
The
town.
reason I ask is because that's one of the items we're being asked.
Hmm.
What should we do with it? And if they've got a considered opinion that's recent, I'd love to see it if it's written down.
I don't know the answer to that. I can find out. That was just from hearsay at a meeting that they looked at. I don't know if they quantified it or how that worked. I
Because
do think one of the things they're suggesting is to have an independent party assess, first of all, assess the facility, see if it's working properly, see if everything is in good working order before you purchased it. And then also to, one of these energy companies that, can do kind of a third party objective assessment. I don't think Hinchman's objective, just
Oh, really?
from all of my dealings with him.
No,
And
the
that's
reason-
where most of the information's coming from.
Yeah, the reason I bring it up is, in a sense, it's very low hanging fruit. You can do nothing and keep reducing the size of the reserve fund every year.
Right.
And just let the thing roll on. It's not a question of, do we make a lot of money or save a lot of money? This was
It's a cost benefit. What's the cost benefit?
when this was
What does
done.
70 grand buy you?
Eh.
Does it buy you 70 grand worth of free energy at the end? Maybe. That's you need somebody to verify that.
And
But
it's beyond us in this group, I think is what you're saying.
And me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
My
We get tired of looking at you like this. You're
You're
about to speak. Give us an
Mitch
Italian expletive is what I think you were about to do.
the Mitch McConnell look.
So
So,
you're going to look at the write-ups on the bigger projects, Herb, and some of the open questions?
Yeah, I did really for my own edification. I was just kind of wondering. It's that information flow that I'm keying in on, and so I'm kind of interested in how the stuff comes in and what it looks like, and if we
Madam
can
Pros-
improve that over time. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I was saying is, somebody with only their mind on updating, let's say, some finance committee capital planning database and outlines, if you'd have to go to every selectmen's meeting and take notes and try to keep it up to date,
Right.
Yeah.
just with that one dedicated focus.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I know that's what you've been doing. I mean, you've made a lot of progress with that, but you can't keep that up forever. It's,
Right.
It's not a working model.
No,
So backing up to the asset list, I just pulled out the reserve sheet that becomes part of the warrant. And if you go through that, we can ignore some of these things for now, like school capital, school special ed, school transportation, school tuition, school playground, fire ponds. Fire department, we already did. Harbor masters, nothing's going on there. Rescue vehicles, which are the ambulances, we already did.
Hey, John,
Dredging is a done deal. Yep.
did Ralph mention anything about fire ponds in your
I asked him
discussions?
about it. I asked him about it. He didn't seem all that concerned. I think that would be a fair statement, Jay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fire ponds,
Well-
Because
he doesn't chase those real hard.
He doesn't chase them real hard, but he was on it for a while early on. The more fire ponds, the better. And we don't, our water sources are limited. And this was, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Well,
Doug Ross spoke to me about it. Doug spoke to me 2 or 3 years ago because I happened to be the chair of the Greens and Grounds Committee at the golf course. And we have a permit to expand the golf course pond. But the numbers to do that are astronomical. We thought it would be 30, 40.
all right, he's frozen again.
Through the new fire department 501c3, but the numbers came in at 80 to 100,000. But Doug was interested in it with the excavation, taking some of the clay and making repairs to Ellen Goodman's pond. So there's some concerns about that pond too. So
okay.
that's
Okay.
all.
There's not a lot of money. It's not a big ticket item. I just wondered if it's something that was even still important, but we do have the point you just made is that we do have fire ponds to maintain. So that answers my question.
Yeah.
I
Just
agree.
going through this capital reserve list, if we've focused on certain things, the fire department, we've pretty much taken care of. Rescue vehicles, we have a plan for that. Stone Wharf is its own big elephant. And the question we have as a committee is, why is there 300,000 being tentatively put into the reserve fund for fiscal year 26? Do we think we need that for matching grants? What do we think we need that for?
Well, I'll smell one thing. I'll smell one thing as a consultant. 75,000 bought a 30% design. There may be another 300,000 to keep designing.
Well, yeah, that could be, but there's already 700,000 in there.
And you should know the answer to the
There's,
question.
what, 600,000? Floats and gangways.
Correct.
Coastal Waters did a good job on. Roads, we've excellent input on roads. Then there's big money around 2 accounts, building facilities in town office. And that's kind of project stuff. And then all the rest of the stuff is, well, there's storm damage and repair. But I think we could limit our focus to, for right now, the fire department, rescue vehicles, Stone Wharf, floats and gangways been done by Herb. Roads has been done by Herb and Mark. Storm damage and repair, and then a conversation about accounts 9030 and 9031, which are buildings, facilities, and town office. You know, and if we get those kind of directionally right, and the town's put as much money away as possible, I don't know what more we can do.
I think that's where you're at. Yeah.
I agree that at the same, you know, right. There's one very simple answer, and one is how much can they afford to put away, and then move backwards from there. But I do think, and I think the point is, I'm hearing people bring up questions about particular reserve accounts. I'm not sure I have those all in Basecamp, but what I welcome is for any questions, you know, log into that number 9070 or whatever it is and put in if you have questions or concerns about it. So we start to build a dialogue about that. And then we just at least we can say, okay, no, we're not going to, you know, it's not enough money at this point. Or we want to know what the $10,000 is for coastal access, or maybe we don't. Those three items for the school add up to $270,000. And I just like to know what they mean. I'm not that I'm really questioning, but you know,
And I think we can get that from Aaron, or
right.
the school should be on the schedule to meet with the select board to present their budget. I don't know whether that happened yet or not. It might be happening in the next 2 weeks while I'm away.
There's a nonprofits meeting, I think, next week, Wednesday. There's a nonprofits meeting with the select board. But okay, so there's just a lot of kind of what I call homework to do on some of these things. I do, just while you're here, Herb, I don't understand fully on the floats and gangways. Somewhere there was some floats that are maybe you can walk us through that, or me through that. And there are 2 floats that are already built for that.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. They're sitting in custom floats, work yard, pile on top of each other, ready to be put in as soon as the weather is, you know, as soon as we decide to, and as soon as the weather is conducive to that.
And they're paid for?
Yep.
Okay.
2 grants. We got a grant. We've been going through it one year at a time. We're getting a grant through the, well, it's actually the, I don't know, it's a big long name. It's a state agency. It's the part of the
Coastal
department.
Access?
Okay.
No, it's not coastal access. It's something like shallow water, something or other. I don't know. I can look up the name for you, but so we've applied. The maximum you can get is $15,000, which is about what a float costs. So we're doing that every year. It's almost a shoe in now. I just kind of fill out the same form, shoot it in. They send us 50. You know, we build the thing. They reimburse us for the 15 grand or whatever, whatever it is. So that process starts in March. So as soon in the next couple of weeks, I'll be looking for the next application and doing a third one for that. The 2 that are built, there are a lot of logistical problems with it. So that was intended that we would get one a year and install one a year, but it took us 2 years to get the first one built. And by then we had another grant and we got another one. So hopefully, the logistics will smooth out a little bit now that we're not dealing with all the storm damage that was tying people up. So that's what we're doing. With that, we'd love to be able to get more money and do more of this stuff because the infrastructure is really starting to deteriorate, and to a point where it's dangerous. And we're looking at other things to do, other sources of income besides just requesting it from the town. And then there's these projects that come up, like the $50,000 to replace the pilings down at Chandler's, which is we kind of have to do it because we're going on the backs of the DOT project to do work down at Chandler's, but it's 50 grand to replace all the town pilings, and there's only like 9 of them. So that's the kind of stuff we're working at there, but we're definitely basically almost every piece of infrastructure is, beyond the time it should be replaced. So we're working through that as aggressively as we can.
Okay. And that, so do we sell the old floats? Do they have any value?
Oh, you want to buy them?
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
They're
drop
yours.
'em off. None of the kids can jump off them. No, I mean,
No,
they
they-
value,
they-
no, probably not.
They have really no value. They are beyond their lifespan, and they haven't been maintained properly.
Yeah, okay, so then, okay, so that's an area
It's
where,
it actually might be an expense to dispose of them.
right,
What they've done before is just thrown the lumber in in the construction debris, and the flotation for all the old floats we've ever had, as far as I can see, is stockpiled up in the public works building,
oh,
doing
okay,
taking up space in the bushes.
uh-huh, okay, okay. Okay, so that's,
Okay, can we move? Are you okay with this, Chip? Or you want
oh,
to?
yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. All right. So Jay is going to work on the public works stuff.
Yep,
Okay. And maybe we can think about reorganizing the list a little bit so it's not strictly by capital reserve account, but it's by the capital stuff that we're focusing on and all the other stuff. Does that make sense, Chip?
well, like, I hate to start mixing them up with capital reserve. I mean, I think it makes
All
sense
right.
to.
No, that's fine.
But
I don't
hang on.
I don't want to screw you up.
No, but you can make visually things are weary, so they can be disappeared. A lot of all those lines that you're looking at, a lot of those can be hidden.
You can hide them. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they get smaller and easier to get ahead
Okay.
of. So it's a big bowl of spaghetti now. We can make it a smaller bowl. of
Okay. Quick look at what our debt capacity is. So if we go into the task list under fiscal capacity or debt capacity, there's a bunch of models I posted there.
Which is fiscal capacity.
Under tasks.
Debt
Keep going down.
capacity.
Yeah. So
Is it the one you posted the other day? I'm not sure exactly where you posted it.
there's a bunch of there's 2 documents that have, one was a conservative view, one was a moderate view, and they both had PDFs.
Okay, debt capacity. These here.
So if we looked at the conservative view PDF,
This is conservative view. What if?
that's
Top
fine.
one, yeah.
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you make it a little bigger? Yeah. Okay, so those numbers in red are fiscal year 26 expense totals and school totals and municipal budget. And I don't have any confidence in that school budget number. And you can see that fiscal year 2026 for the projected revenue is damn close to last year. So I need to see the budget. The 765, which is below the red numbers, is what's in the capital reserve additions for this year. And then there's the bond costs projected out over 10 years, the existing bonds. Municipal expenses net of reserve, additions and bond expense. Oh yeah, okay. So that was the 2985 up above minus the bond expense. Projected expenses and school expenses, municipal net of capital, dollars available for capital. So my confidence that in 2026 we're actually going to have $1,228,000 available in capital, time will tell. So if you then subtract the existing bond expense, which you can see after we go out 2 or 3 years, goes down from 463 down to 176, 174, because we're losing some of the original 2008 debt. So then we've got dollars available either for additional reserve or bonds. Okay, so I just picked a number. Is 500,000 enough for annual reserves? And then I inflated that by 4%. And then if you don't use any bonding, there's additional money available for capital reserve. But then in 2027, I said, oh, there's 311,000 available over and above our reserve. If a 25-year, $1 million bond for 25 years is 70,000, I can do $5 million worth of bonding, 350. Well, I overspent that 311 by $38,000, but the previous year there was 265 extra in there, you see. So we had 765 available and 6 for reserves, only 481 the next year. So then basically it was maximizing the bonding and trying to keep a reserve number that was reasonable, just looking out at what dollars were available. So then I came back and added up the total reserve dollars. So originally, if you said 500 was enough and you inflated it, for over 10 years, we have to have an average reserve contribution of 624. Okay, based on the bond issuing that I did, the actual reserve dollars available is 673. So if 500 was okay, then the bonding we did was okay, and those bonds would be 5 million in 2027, 3 million in 2028, and then there's a couple other years if you slide out to the right where more bonding was done, because the total's 13 million. Five, 3, and 3.
You got 11 there.
Well, so
There's 30, it's
so I
25,
screwed around
26.
sheets. So I didn't trust these sheets, and you should check them. And so go back up to the top if you would, Chip. Okay, so this was the conservative view because I didn't add in any changes in our tax base. For example, new construction. If there's $1 million worth of new houses built every year, that adds about 1/3% to our current tax base is $330 million. $1 million is 1/3%. So we can add some money in based on increase in tax base potentially. And I sent an email to the tax assessor asking him some questions about that. And then the other thing was I didn't put any Axiom repayments in there because conversations we had, well, what if Axiom doesn't pay, et cetera, et cetera. So there's another view that was moderate that added in the Axiom numbers, and it got it up to 18 million. Now, don't forget all those red numbers up above, which are critical. I'm not sure we're going to be able to get to 765,000 in capital available for reserves this year. Then go to the simplified view, if you would, in the task list, the last thing I put out there yesterday was a simplified view, which was kind of a mental check for myself. And if you blow this up, one of the big changes that jumps out here is I calculated the capital spending as a percentage of the total budget. And in 2025, it was 22.7%. In 2026, with the budget numbers I'm using, it jumps up to 29%. I don't know whether that's realistic or not. So this was just a simplified view saying, what are the dollars available for capital? If 30% of your budget is available for capital and you inflate your budget by 4% out for 10 years, you've got a certain number of dollars available total. There's the existing debt, dollars available for new capital, same starting reserve number. And then all I did was say, how many new capital dollars are available in total for 10 years? And it added up to 14 million. How many reserve dollars would be spent? I guess is 11 years, 25 through 36 in those 11 years. How many dollars were available for new debt? 7 million and 3. If you did a $10 million bond in year one, that would cost you $700,000 a year. So I divided 700,000 into the 7.3 million, and it said you could bond 10.5 million right, at some early point in the schedule, and you'd have the money to pay for it for 10 years. So it was just kind of a gut check on all the other calculations I did. None of this is a good presentation to the public or the select board necessarily, but it's my beginning attempt to get our arms around community, what kind of debt capacity we have to do the big projects.
My reaction, John, is there's the real assumption is the 500,000 for reserve assumption.
Correct. That's
And
a critical. That's
somehow aggregating all of the detail that Chip has been working on that we just spent most of the meeting talking about. We need to get to a better number there. That will tell us a lot, because that's the big wild ass guess in this, I think.
Yeah, well, let's see if we can get those numbers tightened up over the next couple of weeks and kind of prioritize. That was in one of the agendas to highest priority open tasks. Certainly not all of them need to be covered, but
Have we a sense of the historic reserves?
I think I did that calculation at one point early on. Or I looked at some of those numbers, but interestingly, and Herb sent me some numbers that at one point in time he was collecting regarding the budget and the big picture, and how much was municipal budget and what was by departments and how much was spent on reserves. And I posted that out here somewhere, and we need to have a database like that. And just an example is in the worksheets that the select board uses for budgeting purposes. They've got 2023 on there, 2024, 2025, and then 2026. Well, some of the numbers for 2023 and 2024 aren't there. The reserve numbers aren't there. There's whole missing numbers on that spreadsheet. And so I'm not even sure the reserve spending was there, Jay. So that obviously it's somewhere I think I went back a couple times and looked online at the warrants to pull out a couple of numbers.
Yeah, I've actually been going through, I took all the warrants and I put them in one document so I can go through it and pick out some things. In fact, I just posted something to Basecamp myself about the undesignated fund usage. But that's where I got those numbers that I gave you originally was from the audit reports or from the town meeting. And if that is a useful tool, I could offer to do some work on trying to continue to mine stuff out of those two sources, unless there's better places you guys know of. I've started mining stuff out of Trio, but apparently we only go back, I don't know, 5 or 6 years in accessible Trio data. I was trying to get the amount of money that we've spent to date on the paving. And I actually had to go back to the audit reports, which got decreasingly specific about that number over time. It was great for a while. They would they said, one of their report line items was we spent this much on paving and we paved these roads in the audit report. It was great. But now it's kind of like you got to dig for it, and you're lucky if you get some number that you think means what we spent that year. But
what's Trio? What's Trio?
Trio is the accounting software that the town uses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the bookkeeper Andrew is gotten pretty facile with it, and is a good source. And you guys should be tapping him for information at times. And if you feel like you need to grease the wheels with Vika to do that, I'm sure she'd be open to it. But he ought to be able to give you some sort of regular reports on an ongoing basis for metrics or numbers that you'd like to see going forward. The sooner you define that and give it to him, the better he can sort of set that process up, because he's not going to be here forever, and sort of make sure it's documented so that has some continuity to it. But what I'm offering here is if that kind of data, I'd need to sort of specifically know what you'd want to look at, I think, because
yeah, what you had there generally made sense to me, but I didn't look at it in detail, so I would hesitate to say, yeah, do it, because
right. But you can think about it. We don't need to decide.
We need to refine exactly what we want.
We don't need to decide right now, but that is something that I could probably help you out with if you wanted help with it.
Okay, and so just an example of one request we had from Vika is the asset list that Chip's been working with so diligently. That hasn't been updated since 2023. So we said, what are the capital purchases since 2023? And we don't have an answer to that question yet. But is that something that Andrew could potentially pull out of Trio?
Absolutely.
Okay.
All you need to do is give him the account numbers of the reserve accounts, and he can print you out a transaction report.
Okay.
Going back, I think 3 or 4 years or 5 years, something like that.
All right. Can we move on to the draft report I put together for the 3/12 budget workshop? So I'm away for 2 weeks. I'm getting back March. And
March what, John?
March 11th, and the budget workshop's March 12th. And we all kind of said we ought to at least give the select board an update on where we're at and what we've been doing and whatever. So I just started a draft report that I have no pride of authorship or anything at all about it, but I think it would be nice if a week before the 12th we could send a report to the select board to say, here the, you know, here's what we've been doing, and we're going to be there, and we want to, you know, get some answers to some questions or answer whatever questions you have for this group, you know.
Where was that? Did you post that,
So
John?
I think I put it under on the calendar, Chip, under March 12th. You told me I put it in the right place.
Yeah. But that was 2 days ago. I can't remember that. Yeah, no, this is a perfect place to have it attached to that. Yep. Okay.
It's right
Yeah,
there.
so-
Scroll up,
Did you-
Chip.
Jay,
Yeah.
did Jay or Jim, did you guys look at this at all?
I looked at it. I thought focusing on process was good. And I mean, I didn't see anything that leaped out at me, but
I will confess to not having looked at it, mostly because
Okay.
I've been getting my eyes fixed the last couple of days.
Oh, the cataract surgery?
Yep.
So
good.
you had one done, or you've had?
I had one done on Thursday, and I went back today for the checkup, and they're going to do the other one March 6th.
Great. Good results. All those colors, right?
So far,
Yeah.
the results are good, but I got to
Yeah.
wait for my eyes to stop being dilated. That's going to be another
Oh.
day or so, apparently.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the efficient way to do this is, but I'm fine if you guys want to, if one of you would volunteer to come up with a final version of this by, let's say, March 5th, to send to Vika and Bob Ernest and says, here's our report, and some of us will be at the March 12th meeting, that would be great. And
Okay.
Okay. So
but we'd need a volunteer to be willing to do that. And we can go through the report quickly and talk about things we ought to add or things we should not say.
Well, I mean, I think if we have enough time to do that, yeah, people want to do.
I think we should, because this is the first output from the committee. So let's do that right now.
can you blow it up a little bit?
Yep.
Ah, thank you.
Yeah, so I wanted to make the point that we didn't even start working until the 25th, and that based on that, we're running well behind the budgeting process, right?
Right.
What are you imagining is the example of a reserve account that you're attaching to this?
Oh, I don't know. Like it could be as simple as the 4 fire trucks. You know, because I think
That
one
would
thing
be
with the fire trucks is we're not putting enough money away. If you want to pay for the fire trucks out of the reserve account, we're not putting enough money into that reserve account. Now we could bond the fire trucks, but you know, or it could be a partial example of the what, you know, I don't know. It could be the road plan that Herb just did. And, you know, here's the history of the roads, and that's been translated into one line
That might be a good
based on the
example.
input from Herb and Mark.
That might be a
And
good
we
example.
need to get to the point where these departments at least are, you know, on an annual basis, updating these plans. That makes sense?
Yes.
Okay,
On number
understanding.
three,
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Jim. I
That's
didn't
it.
hear you.
I was gonna say on item 3, telling them we're doing it is fine. Showing it to them yet is not fine, in my view.
On
Okay,
three,
yeah,
the deck, yeah, okay.
that's fine. So that our comfort
Tell
level
them
with
we're
this
doing
work
it.
with that line just comes out. Yep,
Well, the second line, the sub line comes out, but
yep,
you can tell them we're doing it.
Yeah.
The debt capacity model, is that what you said, Jim?
Yeah, I think saying we're doing it is fine. I
Yeah.
don't think we're ready to show them a model yet, so.
No, not given I mean, we basically have a week to do this in
Yeah,
John's
no,
call.
this isn't gonna get done before John's back, so.
No.
So I just say remove the thing that says, what's your comfort level? The answer is talking about it's fine, showing it is not fine, in my view.
Yeah.
So.
Okay,
So process things, to me, it makes sense to document the grants, you know, I don't know how we work whatever the grants are into the logic of reserve funding and debt capacity. You know, they're all favorable to that, but we don't know how favorable or when they're going to be favorable.
Well, and they're all
Um,
project specific.
Right. Now,
So
but I think it would be important in a report to the community to have a list of here's the existing grants and here's the ones we've applied for, just as information.
You have a list of
And
those?
your wife on Wednesday night, Herb, said that she thought you had created that file in the town shared database.
She did she?
Uh-oh.
Did you?
It's on
have you done
record.
that?
She actually created it. I've recently restructured the file folder structures for all of the grant stuff, and I'm trying to help the office organize, put all the contracts in a place where you can find them, put all the applications in a place where you can find them, that kind of stuff.
could we, for this purpose, John, simply, rather than document all grants, illustrate some grants?
That might be better tact.
So things like the 75,000 for the engineering for the stone wharf, or the items Herb mentioned for the floats.
Yeah.
Give us some examples of what grant possibilities could be.
The floats have been pretty high profile to those guys that talked to the board a lot about them, and they're aware of those. But you could make sure they know you're aware of that. That'd be a quick thing to do.
So change 4 to illustrating potential grants.
okay.
Because
Are you
there's no
taking
way
notes,
we can. Chip is.
The what?
Are you
Which-
taking notes,
Oh, yeah,
Chip?
right
Oh,
there.
this will be, AI will get all this.
Yeah, his artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
AI is great, except somebody's got to do PI with these things eventually. I mean,
All right,
these are easy to talk about, but then they have to be done.
okay.
So, but illustrating potential grants, I'm taking that down. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and then understand significant changes in revenue and expense,
Yes.
And the things we know so far is school budget savings are coming up. You need to scroll down a little bit for us, Chip. Reduced Yarmouth enrollment, retirement of the MSAD 51 debt, and increased tuition revenue at the Shebeg Island School. And then retirement of the original Cumberland debt's coming up, and the potential Axiom broadband revenue.
Right.
Municipal budget concern, loss of the allocation of undesignated reserve funds based on low balances. I don't know whether they've talked about that at all in this budgeting process, but I personally have a concern. They've got 250,000 in the budget now to use from the undesignated reserve.
I would love to go through the exercise I just went with you guys on the use of that fund and how it's changed over time and the philosophy behind it. We don't need to do it now, but I posted something that you guys can look at that's I pull out of there, and I'd be interested in your take on it.
Good.
Would a better way to couch this on the 12th be level of undesignated reserves and fluctuations over time? Something like that.
I would just say managing the undesignated reserve.
Right, okay.
Yeah. What's,
Yeah, sure.
we don't have any
Okay.
management strategy right now. The strategy
Okay.
has been use as much as we can to reduce the taxes. That's been the strategy.
As long as it stays within the
16
range
to
that
20,
it's supposed
16
to
to
be.
25% of some number, which we
Which
don't know
they-
what that number is.
Which they have stopped
Yes.
expressing explicitly. They simply say that there's a policy, and in accordance with that policy, we're recommending X number of dollars. They're not
Yeah.
proving that, they've actually done the work. That
Yeah,
we used to do
well,
that.
the issue is we used 250 last year and 200 the year before that. And I believe there was conversation leading up to the town meeting that the select board thought taxes were going to go up 2 or 3%, and they went up 8.
Yeah.
And I think that was because of looking at the wrong number, looking at the total budget number versus previous years versus looking at the funds that are required to be to come from real estate tax, and they're different, and they get impacted by the use of the undesignated reserve funds.
Yeah, if this committee does nothing else, giving whatever select boards in play an appreciation for what those funds really should be used for. It's a common thing in small towns. They consider it their rainy day fund, and they don't even manage it at all.
Well, the other
Yeah.
thing is that they constitute the cash management for the town. In other words, if the revenues coming into the town for some reason came in way too slowly or something, the undesignated fund balance is where that operating cash comes from.
That's right.
So there's a reason that you have a minimum of 16%.
Yep.
And I think that these things need to be better understood, as opposed to, I think, as one of us just put it, it's not sort of the savings account that we can dip into whenever we feel like it.
Right. And the last two, and I won't, this will be the last thing I say on it. I just sort of got it under my skin this morning, so I'm talking about it. But the last two town warrants have an item, have an article in there that says, okay, we're going to use $200,000 out of the undesignated fund balance. And then about 2 articles down from that, they say, oh, we're going to take another $15,000 out of the unassigned fund balance. Well, they're the same balance. It's coming out of the same place. And in neither place do they define what that balance is, or, I mean, I've let it go the last couple of years, but I'm about ready to get up and rant and rave somewhere. Not in front of you guys.
Oh, that's fine. And I still am not understanding this whole thing, but how does that, the undesignated fund gets funded by leftover stuff from the budget?
It's when we over budget and have money left over that's not spent.
Okay. And
Everything in the operating budget that is not spent at the end of the fiscal year goes into that.
Okay. And
So it's
then,
bad budgeting.
Yeah, if there's too much money in there, or if in any one year too much money is in there, you've over budgeted.
Yeah.
And-
We've underspent.
So if you didn't have enough based on that formula, let's say we're going to be short. How do you then get money to keep within that range that's designated by the state?
No, it's not designated by the state. That's designated by us.
That's a
Oh, all right.
policy.
So we have a range of whatever it was, 16 to 25%. So let's
Yep.
say we're under, we're going to come up with 12% for next year. We're short. How do we get money into it then?
We adjust our budget to, to
Oh, okay.
I mean, we just don't really, if you didn't use it the next year and you're not really going to get in that situation because
Okay.
if you've managed the money correctly, I mean,
Okay.
that's the whole point. But it's basically don't use it inadvertently and it'll be there.
Okay.
Okay, so you've been doing a good job of keeping notes, Chip. So we're past the undesignated reserve fund.
Can we go back to the text?
I'm going.
All right, I wanted to make the point that I think Basecamp is working great. I mean, I know it's working great for Chip and I, and Herb's using it and helping us out. So I would recommend that future committees use it or something similar because it's capturing a lot of information. All right, some of our work is dependent on securing additional information. Open questions. Why the 300,000 additional reserve for the stone pier? So accounts 9030 and 9031. 9030 is building facilities. Renovation or improvements to the town-owned buildings to include town garage, sand shed, transfer station, and public safety building. Does not include town office. 9031 is town office, a reserve fund to build a new town office and or renovate the existing one. So it's not necessarily an important question, but maybe it is. My understanding is that the facilities committee is recommending that the public safety building be the first priority, which is firehouse rescue service, and then the existing facility would be renovated for the town office. If that's true, and that's accepted approach, 9031 says renovate or build a new one. Well, should we be having funds set aside to build the new public safety building instead, I guess?
Yeah, they need to tell you that more clearly, and I'm not sure they have a clear opinion yet.
Yeah. Has an analysis of the undesignated fund balance been done? Maybe
I just did.
You just did it? Are we in good shape?
Right here.
No, I'm ready to rant and rave.
Whoa. This could be a long meeting.
All right, I'll mute.
The annual meeting I'm talking about.
Is there a complete list of grants? Well, Herb's going to give us that information, so maybe we don't need that, right?
Yeah, and
Well,
I think, yeah, I don't think we need it right now. No.
So 4 can go away. And for projecting what our bonding capacity is, I would like to know what they think a reasonable tax increase is. Is it 4%, 5%, 6%? And then full reevaluation.
Wait, before you go past that, I think you got to be really careful about your language. Are you talking about an increase in the rate or an increase in the assessed value?
I'm talking about an increase in your taxes or mine.
Right, which could be more passively interpreted as your property becomes more valuable, so you pay a little more taxes. Could be hostilely interpreted as the tax rate is $1 and it's going to $1.04. You know, and you don't want that because that's viewed as hostility. I don't know how you're going to couch this, but you're really saying, is it reasonable to assume
Well, an example,
continued
you know,
inflation
if
in property values?
Traditionally, the way it's been talked about is to use an example of, you know, a medium house, $300,000 value house. They pay $5,000 in taxes or $8,000 in tax or whatever it is. And if you increase the tax amount by X, they're going to have to pay another $100 on their annual tax bill.
That's the rate.
That's the
Question.
rate. That's the rate. And that, of course, if their house value goes up, you know, it's a different number. So the reevaluation thing, as you point out, you know, it's going to affect that. But if you take the valuation piece out of it, because until you do a complete revaluation, things are like going like this. So your taxes might go up, your neighbor's taxes might go down, or their valuation might go up, might go down based on one of those, you know, formulaic reevaluations they do. So it's a very dynamic kind of environment. So making it a concrete, like, you know, here's the median example, $300,000. If we raise the tax 4%, they're going to cost this much. Do you think somebody that owns a $300,000 house is going to do that, or is going to vote yes or no? You know, that's kind of it's got to get to that simplistic level, I think. Otherwise, you just go crazy with, you know, pushing you push
No, I
on the
understand
valuation.
it's, but the words you use conjure up different visions. And I mean, I'm just thinking of that whole tax rebellion 40 years ago in California, which was caused by real estate creep. And the person I heard rant most about this on the island has been John Rent. So,
You're talking about
just
Project 2 or
posing the
Prop 2?
question.
Go ahead,
to-
John. Explain yourself.
no, my issue was that we thought we were getting a 2 or 3% tax increase, and it was 8 for most people, whether you had a $300,000 house or a $2 million house. So that was my main issue. But then asking people how they felt about the 8%, the people I asked didn't even know it went up. So obviously I asked the wealthy summer people that didn't care. But we do need to care.
Well, it's also how
it
you
impacts
package it.
everybody.
It's also how you package it. You know,
Right.
if you're above board and you know, talk about it at these meetings and you say, in order to give you these services, this is what we believe we have to do, and you show that, people have been very reasonable. I mean, there's a very small group of people here primarily living on fixed incomes that don't want the tax rate to go up at all. But that's a very small minority of the voters.
Is this a dangerous question to raise in the absence of specific benefits then?
Well, I think, and I do agree with that the more people know about what's going into this, the more they see things and understand all these, they are more reasonable. If they know what the reasons are, and they all know the big reasons. But I think the message that I'm realizing is that there's small reasons which are very significant, like a fire truck. You know, who would think that would be $500,000? But that's, so I think, but I do think that letting people know that, and that's part of the other challenge too, is to how do you do this? When I talked to somebody, whatever, it doesn't matter, of a week ago, and they said, you know, trouble is it just shows up in a warrant, and all of a sudden they're saying, hey, the select board recommends this, you do this, and I don't know anything about it. Well, of course, if they paid attention to it along the way, they probably would if they paid attention to the budget discussions. And there's certain, you know, always falling out of the bell curve. But as I'm reading this here, I think it's important for us also to going back to the very, very beginning of this, is that, it's been a total of 6 weeks or something that we've been in business here trying to digest this. And we want them to understand we have more questions than answers. We have a lot of answers, I think, for the time, but these are all good questions. And I think it's good for them to know, in order for us to help you understand and give you we need all this information. There's a lot of information.
So,
which is all-
so that concept that we were just on, the tax rate, really speaks to fiscal capacity, right? So how are you approaching the fiscal capacity in this presentation?
Yes, that's a good question here, because one of the reasons I wrote that question down was we need a certain amount of capital dollars available. So if the school operating expenses and the municipal operating expenses go up 5%, are we willing to put another 2% in for capital expense? Because we know we need that money for the big projects, so if the inflation factor on municipal and town expenses is 5%, are we willing to put an extra $80,000 every year, inflated in to cover our capital needs?
I think it's dangerous to ask that question in the abstract until you can show
Yeah,
what
I
it
agree.
means.
I understand.
Yeah, you could ask it in the context of, it's a facet of the fiscal capacity.
But I think you need to have shown your fiscal capacity model and what it
Right.
means before you start talking about it.
Right.
That's,
Yeah, and then
And
you can show the sensitivity to inflation and
right.
raising additional taxes or whatever, raising additional capital money and what the impact on taxes is.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
All right, so we're taking number 6 out, and full reevaluation, in my mind, didn't have anything to do with 6. It was just a minor question. We've got the money supposedly in there to do a reevaluation, full reevaluation now. Are we going to do one in 2026, 2027? Because at some point in time, we need to be putting in another 10,000 a year for the next one, 10 years from now. That's all.
Yeah.
Well, there's a bigger question with that, which is for people to interpret the meaning of the capital options we're gonna put out. They have to know what their taxes are. And if I've watched this in cases where you start down a capital plan and 6 months into it, a reevaluation occurs and all arithmetic is off the table and everyone's scrambling, trying to figure out what it means to them personally, and everything goes into a hiatus. So I think knowing when the reevaluation is going to happen is an important item, because that could impact how things are calculated, or at least when they're calculated.
Well,
I guess I understand what you're saying, but the way I think about it is, okay, you do a reevaluation. The current tax base is 330 million. And the new tax base is 660 million. Well, if nothing else changes, the budgeting process is all the same and the expenses and everywhere all the same, then the millage just gets cut in half. Right?
Exactly. But knowing that, how would I say this? If you walk into, if this ends up in a system that's going to walk into town meeting with various warrants or other things, and you're in the middle of a reevaluation process, you're going to have a mess, in my experience, because people have doubt. So it'd be useful at least to know when that's imagined. Maybe I'm being overly sensitive, but I've been skewered in too many town meetings over this process. So,
Well, I think that's an information thing, because I mean, a reevaluation is a redistribution in the town,
right,
to make it more fair for everybody, so that everybody's paying
right.
a like portion of their property. So for any given group of people, their taxes might go up, their taxes might go down. The budget doesn't change. The revenues you raise don't change. It's really just, it's really just a redistribution. And if you're doing it in a responsible pattern, like you're not letting it get too bad, then the shock shouldn't be that severe. And if the interim adjustments that are made on a yearly basis are done competently, then that's a different problem. That's a problem of not paying attention to the town
Oh, yeah.
fathers, or whoever it is, not paying attention to the disparities in the assessments. And
If you're so confident in this, that's fine.
yeah,
I'm
I hear what you're
raising a
saying.
generic issue, not a specific issue.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It has to be handled properly. What state we're in right now, I'm not sure. So you could be right on.
Well, I could be, raising a tempest in a teapot too. So
Okay.
Just a
Okay,
thought.
Are there things that people want to add or delete from this general
I would like to
document?
suggest that if we're under your number 5, that's all how we're saving money, how we're having lower expenses.
Yeah,
Against that is a thought, perhaps, is that we somehow introduce the idea that more money is going to be spent if we undertake as we undertake projects. So that, I mean, if somebody were to just read this, they'd say, okay, good, we're spending less money next year, or we should be, and they're not going to see spending less money.
well, a good example
Yeah,
might be the $500,000 fire truck.
Yeah,
That-
but it's
certain needed items that may be surprisingly expensive. So
right, and they should be, and some of these types of items can be included. And if you bond a $500,000 fire truck, at $35,000 a year, that's over 25 years. That's what it's going to, that's going to increase.
right.
So are
Okay.
you looking for like an expense, some, a
I'm
list
trying
of
to
things
create
on the left-hand side that are expenses, and things on the right-hand side that are increased revenue, costs that are kind of going to balance one way or the other? Is that what you're
Well,
looking
Well, or just examples.
I'm trying
Oh,
to, I'm trying to suggest that, you have to start to introduce the fact that there are going to be some big expenses over the next few years.
yeah.
And, while the town is working to save money and, has some savings coming up by paying off debt and so forth, that there's going to be new debt coming. So, let's see that there are two sides to the equation, and the town's going to work hard to balance it and or keep the effect of the increased costs of doing these projects, to minimize it as much as possible, but it will be there.
No, it's a good way to do it.
I think it's a good point.
Did we itemize the major projects in this report? I just don't remember.
No,
No, we really weren't.
I don't
I
think we're quite there yet because we
We
don't
don't
have
have
the
'em.
costs.
Yeah, we don't have them, but I do agree that it is good. I mean, everybody knows, if you talk to anybody, they know about, the big things, the stone pier costs and all those. But things like a fire truck, I bet you one
Yeah.
out of 10 people would go, what? I certainly would have. So it is good to highlight that. I think it's good to have some balance to what we're saying, because I agree with Jay. It shows all savings and it's like, oh, um, so we should highlight some of the
Just like we should highlight in terms of the grants and, like the grants Herb's been getting for new floats.
right.
That's terrific. That's great news. And it should be out there. But, but it should be part of the context of services we're providing
Yeah.
against costs and how we might get the money to cover that. So anyway,
Okay. Yep.
So, Chip, are you in a position to create a document based on this conversation to forward to the select board in advance of the 12th?
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to, I guess I should be saying, would you be comfortable doing that? And you think it's?
Yeah, I guess, sure. I mean, there's a lot of questions, and there, like I said, there's many, many hours of work on the asset list and stuff. But I think, yes, basically the message is we've had 6 weeks. We've gained an awful lot of knowledge about what's going on. We have a lot of questions. This is a 15,000-foot view of things and not getting into specifics. And I think it's good for people to understand that there's a lot of work they have to do, and to an earlier point, getting with people in the town to develop things. So I think, yeah, we can do that. And I can post it right in this string. I mean, this is the string. You're going to get this in 5 minutes, and take a look at it, and then keep on the string. And again, just to not to get, but as far as Basecamp goes, when you get this, you click on it, you'll go right to this string and keep reading it. And over the next few days, I mean, I think to be effective, it's better if we get this to them, even with less detail, if we get it to them a week early, so that we don't take 2 weeks to make the more detailed document and then show up with them and they're flat-footed. They have no questions for this. I mean, I think it helps the process move quicker if they know all these things. So can boil it down and just on this string, keep, going in and making changes to any of this or suggestions. I'm just going to show you. I'm going to post this right now. You're all going to get it. If you let's say that Jay was just making a point about this. You can go in Basecamp and copy this text. So let's say Jay's got some more thoughts about this, and go down to this, and this is Jay saying, had some additional thoughts on this, and he's just working on this piece right there. So you can do that kind of thing to really help construct this document. Look and cut a piece out of it if you want to change the way we're wording something. This, I think, is where most of the work will be done in the next week for, to really craft this. And that's, so we,
in a lot of ways, this outline covers everything nicely.
yeah, it does. It does. And I think, yes, it's not a time to go into great details. It's just to say, okay, 6 weeks, here's what we got.
Yeah.
But that's, yeah, all of those things you can help to craft this document by whatever. And it should be a
Great.
simple 2-page document. And I can give them a link to the asset list so they can go in and look and they can understand and go, what the hell is that? But understand that there's there's 150 line items in this thing that came from town documents. We didn't create them. So maybe we only need to focus on 25 of them. But anyway, so they understand some of the scope, the magnitude of.
Super. We are well over our 2-hour standard time limit. Any other discussion items?
Yeah.
Yes.
Nope.
What's the other one? Okay, I move that we approve the minutes of the 2/14 meeting. Do I have a second?
Second,
Second,
All in favor of approving the minutes?
aye.
aye.
I see 4 hands up. Okay, anything else before we adjourn?
Yeah, have a great trip to Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Send us back some sunshine.
Okay, well,
You
I'm
could
sure
take us all down and we could work down there.
it'll be
That's
spring
true.
by the time I get back, I'm sure. Thanks for all your help, Herb.
Yes,
You know,
thank you very much.
there's an official opening on this committee. We're allowed to have 5.
You talking to me?
Yeah, all right.
Yeah. Okay.
We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Okay. See you guys. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye now. Good night.
All right.